For those of you who don't already know, iQOO is a sub-brand of Vivo, which is a sub-brand of BBK Electronics, which is the parent company to OnePlus and Oppo is the parent company of Realme. Coming from quite a large family tree, iQOO has always been the gaming-centric child, until the iQOO 5 series, releasing just 5 months ago by the way, which landed up as a buffed-out version of Vivo's X series devices. The iQOO 7 builds on this with even more power under the hood, and shifts away from its gaming roots to a more supercar aesthetic. I have the BMW Motorsports edition of the iQOO 7, which has only been seen in the Pro version of its predecessor, and it suits the phone just right, especially with that wonderful massive 120 watt charger in the box, and it comes in at a whopping low $650 USD, $60 cheaper if you're willing to go for the 8GB of RAM variant. That's pretty much everything in the box. Let's go ahead and give this guy an unwrapping. This is the Legend White BMW edition. You can also pick it up in Latent Blue or Black Mirror. I think that this white glass at the back, which is indeed frosted, it is Gorilla Glass 6, looks absolutely phenomenal, especially with those pinstripe lines going down the right hand side. We have a 4000 mAh battery, 120 watt flash charging, no wireless charging unfortunately, no IP certification, but we do have 5G packed in here. It is kitted with Gorilla Glass 6 in the front and the back, and we do have an aluminum frame. When it comes to your fingerprint smudges, it's pretty much impossible to see off the bat, so you don't really need to use a cover, especially with that little tiny camera bump at the back. And if you do decide to slap on the included cover, it is a hard shell case. It looks absolutely fantastic and adds even more branding to the back, really highlighting that BMW Motorsport partnership. Here's a close-up look, and moving on to the textured power button and non-split textured volume rocker. That's always nice to see. We have an indent at the top, nice and clean left-hand side. We do have a dual SIM card slot at the bottom of the phone. Unfortunately, no expandable storage option here. We have a USB Type-C at the bottom, unfortunately 2.0 transfer speeds, and we do have a dual speaker system. It actually says dual speakers at the bottom, which is kind of funny, I guess. And that minimalistic camera bump is definitely smaller than the competition out there, especially for the likes of that wonderfully massive Note 20 Ultra camera bump, and even that new S21 as well. Makes for some minimal wobble when on a flat surface. And looking at the back design, I could safely say this looks like a 2021 flagship for sure. I really like the white on the back. It's not too glossy, it's not too pearly, it's just right. It's nice and frosted. Like I said, those 3 pinstripes on the back just add some extra flair. But what about the front? Well, we are kitted with a 20:9 aspect ratio, 6.62 inch AMOLED display. It is full HD plus with a PPI of 397.5. We do have a 120 Hertz refresh rate. Vivo claims 1000 Hertz instant touch sampling rate, whatever that is. 300 Hertz touch sampling rate is what I think it actually is at. Here's the screen. It looks phenomenal even when paired up against way more expensive phones out here. I guess the most similarly priced phone is the recently released Xiaomi Mi 11 with the same Snapdragon 888 chipset that you see within the Vivo iQOO 7 over here. The colors really do pop, and it is really bright at 1300 nits peak brightness over here, and it actually does show compared to even the Note 20 Ultra next to it on the right hand side there. It has a nice little hole for the camera in the front over there, nice and centered, and of course we have a 120 Hertz refresh rate panel, and opposed to the 90 Hertz on the Huawei and 60 Hertz on the iPhone, I think 90 Hertz is pretty much the sweet spot, but you definitely feel a difference between 90 or 120 compared to the 60 Hertz iPhone 12 Pro Max on the right hand side over there. Moving away from that, we do have something called Smart Switch when it comes to refresh rate, which is a variable refresh rate jumping between 30, 60, 90 and 120 for better battery life. So that's always an option if you want to maximize that 4000 mAh battery. We do have dark mode, which can dim the wallpaper in the background, which is great. And we can change different sets of the dark mode. I guess you could say different shades, lighter or darker, which is neat. And it does work in third-party apps. You can't choose which ones, it just works, I guess. And we have an always on display, something new here for Vivo. Well, new customization options, I guess you could say. We have seen an always on display before. We have a sensory clock which actually changes over time, which is pretty neat. But I do like the standard OriginOS one over here. It's really nicely themed, and it gives a little nice aesthetic when you decide to lock your phone. But before we can go into the phone and use all the wonderful features OriginOS has to offer, Vivo says, screw Apple, screw the environment. We're going to throw a 120 watt charging block in the box with loads of plastic so that you can charge your phone up from 0 to 100% in 15 minutes. That is what is advertised anyway. We do have an optimized battery charging option if you'd like to charge it slower to preserve battery life over time. I'm going to do it the fastest possible here using the FlashCharge 120 watt block. 5 minutes, 37%. That is absolutely mental. I've never seen anything like it. 50% in just 6 minutes. This is ridiculous. You could literally go to the bathroom, have a little leak, and you're back, and your phone is fully juiced up. 10 minutes, 81%. Have you ever? The Mi 10 Ultra did 120 watt, 4,500 milliamp hour battery, 0 to 100 in 31 minutes. This has done it in its advertised time of 15 minutes, where the Xiaomi Mi 10 Ultra's advertised time is 23 minutes, and it did it in 31 minutes. This is on point with its advertised time, even with it being on airplane mode set, automatic brightness, 100%. 15 minutes. It does have a smaller battery than the Mi 10 Ultra, though. That is the only other phone I've tested on my channel with 120 watt charging, and this absolutely leaves it in the dust. Moving on to that wonderful in-display fingerprint sensor, Vivo was indeed the first smartphone to mass produce this technology within a phone, and we do have a couple different animation options. We have the actual animation on top of the phone when it is locked, and you can also change it when you actually go into the phone, which is pretty neat, and you can completely disable it as well, which is what I prefer because I don't really like animations when it comes to fingerprint sensors, and it makes it even snappier. Comparing it to the Huawei Mate 40 Pro's optical fingerprint sensor, it is definitely quicker than that one. Comparing to the Mi 11, faster than that one too. Compared to the ultrasonic sensor underneath the Samsung Galaxy Note 20 Ultra, pretty much on par. And compared to the 3D facial recognition on the iPhone, of course it streaks ahead of that. We do have unsecure 2D face unlock that is on the Vivo iQOO 7 over here. We have some animations, though it's kind of off center, so it looks a bit strange. And comparing the facial recognition to other smartphones with unsecure, it's definitely a bit quicker than those, a hell of a lot quicker than the Samsung Galaxy Note 20 Ultra. Though the iPhone has secure 3D facial recognition as well as the Huawei, so it's impressive that they can still unlock fast and it is secure, where the iQOO 7 is not secure at all. Though that selfie cam can be used for more than just facial recognition, we do have a 16 megapixel selfie snapper. It looks absolutely phenomenal over here, even with bokeh effect, pretty much no edge detection whatsoever. This is TechNeck recording a 1080p 30 FPS video using the Vivo iQOO 7's selfie cam. The selfie video recording is completely capped at 30 FPS and 1080p. Let me know what you guys think of the audio and video quality when using the selfie cam to record video on the Vivo iQOO 7. At the back is where this phone truly shines. We have a 48 megapixel Sony IMX598 custom sensor by Vivo with an aperture of f1.79, and we have optical image stabilization. We have a 13 megapixel ultra wide and a 13 megapixel portrait telephoto, which can go all the way up to 2 times optical zoom. Here's the ultra wide shot, a little bit of a purple effect on the right there, not quite sure what's happening with that. The 48 megapixel main looks great, 4:1 bin down to 12 megapixel using that main 48, looks absolutely fantastic. 2 times optical zoom looks great. 5 times you can see it's kind of dipping in quality here, but still better than other smartphones at this price point. 10 times zoom still looks usable. 20 times zoom is the max. It is digital. Honestly, I can still see what's going on here. 12 megapixel main, 4:1 bin, natural bokeh, and then shooting over to the portrait mode using that portrait telephoto doesn't look quite as good as the natural bokeh. We do have a macro mode, no macro sensor here. It utilizes the ultra wide sensor. Looks pretty great. We have 4K 60 frames per second plus optical image stabilization using the main cam. It is nice and stable, packed with detail. Same with 1080p 60 FPS OIS, looks really great. A lot of smartphones at this price point can't quite hit 60 FPS at 4K. This does it absolutely fantastic. The downside with this though is that we're capped at 30 FPS 1080p when it comes to ultra wide, nothing more than that. No 4K, no 60 FPS, which really sucks. Ultra stable off of here, ultra stable on is utilized using 1080p 60 FPS. Nothing more than that. It kind of dips in detail, but we do have OriginOS version 1, and oh my goodness, it is absolutely amazing. It is skinned over Android 11, and look at the screen. I mean, first things first, when you look at this, you think iOS. It looks just like an Apple device, but there are some kinks that it has going for it. If you prefer your Android experience, you can travel to a parallel world, which you have to set up separately, by the way, and you have a typical, pretty much stock-like Android experience. You can shoot back into OriginOS's custom mode over here, and you can get the best of both. It does things phenomenally well when it comes to multitasking, floating windows, all that jazz that you've come to know and love on Androids. You can even save multitasking apps and pop them on your home screen as an individual icon and jump into it later, can also have a bigger view of your recent tabs, and all these widgets really do come to life. You can always change the size of pretty much every single one. Only some of them are interactive though, but it still looks great. We do have core components over here, which are those widgets. Unfortunately, most of them are in Chinese, and we can change the back window style. We can even have the sky at the top there, which is actually in relation to the weather, and a time function which tells you what time of day it is based on where the sun is currently positioned. Very innovative over here, pretty much what BMW does with their motorsport vehicles. We have gestures from the bottom, from the right, from the top. There are just way too many features to go through. I'm telling you just a handful over here. You can even change the colors of your notification tray pulling down, and there is even a noise it makes when you remove an app icon from the home screen. Other than that, we can split core components and we can join them with other core components. We also have lens, which is shortcuts pretty much to different camera options. We can change our refresh rate on the fly, as well as different performance modes. And we even have touchscreen animations with particle quality. It looks pretty unusual, something new, I guess. Let me know in the comment section down below what you guys think. There is dynamic effects of pretty much every single thing that you could do with the smartphone when it comes to going into your home screen once being locked, from charging animations to even plugging your USB in. And you can even change the wallpaper so that it changes with the amount of steps that you take in a day. Rest assured, there is Google services routed into the settings, and you can just download an APK Google Play Store. And for those of you who live abroad and you need to translate some applications, fear not, Vivo has you covered here with wonderful Jovi Translate. Haptics actually feel absolutely great. We do have super audio software boosting those dual speakers. Let's have a listen. Talking about performance over here, we do have a Snapdragon 888 processing chip, and we have 12 gigs of RAM, and it even says it can take 3 gigs of RAM from the phone storage in case your storage gets too high. Why don't more phones do this? Well, it's because your UFS 3.1 storage is a hell of a lot slower than the LPDDR5 RAM that you get packed within the device. It's like taking a SATA drive on your PC and using it as RAM. It's just not feasible. We have hi-fi options because we have an included DAC within the phone whenever you pop in some earphones. And we do have screen overlay of some sorts when it comes to gaming, if you are into that kind of thing. The best thing here is the Eagle Eye Vision, which pretty much pops the game, brightens it up even past the brightest setting of the phone. I usually use Geekbench here to run an FPS overlay, but it kept crashing. It did the same thing with the Mi 11, so it must be a Snapdragon 888 compatibility issue. In the developer options, you can show your current FPS. It is not real time though. It just shows what that game or whatever you're doing is capable of. PUBG Mobile, HDR graphics, extreme FPS, we're hitting 60 FPS. I'm not sure if it's stable or not because, like I said, it's not a real-time FPS counter like I've done in the past, but it gives you an idea of what you're currently seeing. If we're in a lower mode, that 60 would change to 40. With Dead Trigger 2, we can go all the way up to 120 FPS in settings, ultra high graphics, but for some reason it's capping it at 60. Well, that's what the FPS overlay at the top left says. I'm not quite sure. It feels really smooth, fluid. Looks absolutely fantastic with that Eagle Vision mode. Real Racing 3 has no FPS cap. We're getting 120 FPS as you can see on the top left. Once again, not quite sure if it's stable or not. Hopefully I get to use Geekbench Pro going forward to test out the FPS properly. But now it's time to test out its performance when it comes to benchmarks. That Snapdragon 888 is no slouch. We have Monster Mode and Ultra Game Mode over here to boot. Going into our first benchmark, which is AnTuTu, Then we'll jump into Geekbench, and last but not least, we'll jump into 3D Mark Wildlife, mashing through AnTuTu benchmark over here, 30 milliamp hour per minute drain, which is better than the Mi 11 that I tested out not too long ago. The battery temps actually increased by 10.8 degrees Celsius, which is less than the Mi 11, and the CPU increase of 11 degrees is less than the Mi 11's 14. The final score, 729,707 points for the iQOO 7, which trumps all the phones below it. Moving on to Geekbench 5.2.5 using the same Ultra Game Mode and Monster Mode. We got a single core score of 1144 and multi-core of 3720, which is still quite a bit off the iPhone 12 Pro Max, slightly higher than that of the Mi 11. Last benchmark over here, 3D Mark Wildlife version 2.1.4. Speeding through this, we got an FPS of 34.3 and a score of 5734. The iQOO 7 truly feels like the fastest smartphone on the planet in 2021 right now. It certainly looks the part with this BMW aesthetic. Takes great pictures for the phone of this caliber, especially focusing on performance and fast charging. It does a great job all around. I'm particularly interested at seeing what it can do in the battery department, so stay tuned for a battery drain test. The software of OriginOS is absolutely phenomenal. I've never seen anything quite like it. I was overwhelmed when I first started using it, but I'm really enjoying it. 120 Hz doesn't hurt, and of course it does translate into some games. I'm sure we'll get more support going forward. That screen looks absolutely gorgeous, super bright at 1300 nits, and there are competitors out there. However, the Xiaomi Mi 11 is pretty similarly priced with slightly better camera system. The Huawei is more than double the price, as well as the iPhone 12 Pro Max and the Samsung Galaxy Note 20 Ultra. Of course, we are missing an IP certification on the iQOO 7 as well as wireless charging, but other than that, this is probably my favorite phone so far. I could definitely recommend it to anyone willing to import it at the current point in time, but just bear in mind that I think there's some tricks up Vivo's sleeve going forward this year.